Welcome to the trailer for the Tim Boxeo Show. Tim, thanks a lot for doing this podcast. Let me ask you this. What can we expect from this podcast? And without giving us the Saul Farah story, we'll wait for that.
This will be an exciting, entertaining, really enjoyable time into the crevices, into the cracks of club boxing, not only in the United States, Mexico, but internationally as well. One of the things we have talked about previously, you and I, Angelo, is just how much club boxing exists each and every weekend. And like you mentioned, some people may have seen it on my timeline, but what I'm really most excited about is to tell deeper stories about these fights from weekend after weekend after weekend of fights in Tijuana, as an example, where you can go to see a 4-round war between two fighters you've never heard of and just be pleasantly surprised and highly entertained, or a future world champion, somebody like Devin Haney, who started his career, or probably the most talked about heavyweight fighter outside of the top 3 or 4, Chris Lovejoy, who's fought at Big Punch Arena in Tijuana.
What?
For 12 fights or so.
I'm out of the loop on that one, but okay. I thought you were going to say like Jesus Ramos, who we got coming up, fighting on a pay-per-view, who's got his start. Well, not his start, but he early in his career, he fought at a Big Punch and Cheers Bar, which is not the one in Boston. But I mean, you want to tell people a little bit about Cheers Bar?
Cheers Bar is a along with Big Punch Arena, is another epic venue in Tijuana. And if you just Google Cheers Bar Tijuana and look at the exterior of it, you'll know by looking at the picture that that's a place one day before the end of your life you want to see a live fight. I guarantee it.
Would you want to be somebody who's been brought in as a B-side?
Not if you want to walk out alive, I don't think. No, probably not. When you're getting brought in to be the B-side at Big Punch Arena or anywhere in Tijuana for that matter, at least up until this point, and that's probably something we should talk about in depth on one of our future episodes, because the commissioner at in Tijuana has recently changed. But up until that point, I mean, you're going to Tijuana for one reason only, as a B-side, and that is to lose. But
so there's a new sheriff in town, is what you're saying.
There's a new sheriff. Yes, sir. There is a new sheriff in town.
And what about over in Europe? Do you have any little nuggets for us? If maybe, you don't want to talk too much about, maybe you say, okay, I know a little bit about Mexican boxing. What about Europe, though?
See, that's the beauty of watching international club boxing. And there's so many nooks and crannies at different parts of the world that just offer up, again, just enjoyment that you're not going to see on the undercard on ESPN, DAZN, or even on Showtime or Fox. You can see heavyweights in Germany that, how should I say this? They're heavyweights. They're definitely never going to be bridgerweights, right?
Uh-huh.
Maybe they're even heavyweights that have 100% knockout ratio, but yet, we're not going to see them on any. We're not going to see them on any American undercard anytime soon. But the entertainment when two of these guys get together is an all-time high. But so there's Europe, and it goes well beyond Germany, right? But then there's Africa, and if you've never sat down and watched an African club show, from the event starting 2 to 3 hours late to those said 2 to 3 hours late, and keep in mind the start time on these shows is 8 p.m. local time, and we're kicking off 3 hours late, and we've got a 15 fight card, and 2 a.m. we're going to run in those swing bouts, and there's some crazy stuff that happens at 2 a.m. in the middle of Africa when we're talking about a club show. And that's the kind of stuff that, I don't know. I just love watching it. It's just there's so many opportunities for entertainment. It's almost can't miss every weekend.
So, how likely is it that each week we will talk about rings that are not up to standard with the Nevada State Athletic Commission?
The likelihood is the probability of that is as close to 100% as we can. I mean, hasn't it been almost every other weekend I've shared pictures of rings on cinder blocks? I think the last 3 Africa cards I've watched, a fighter was more as equally likely to go through the ropes as to get himself intertwined in them, almost like a basket weaving competition. So yeah, it's good stuff.
And do you think we'll ever talk about, the big stuff, the Canelos, the Errol Spence, the Anthony Joshuas? Is that what people are coming to this podcast for?
I hope not. Yeah, I hope not. I don't want to talk about that stuff. There's plenty. I mean, there's so many podcasts out right now that if that's something you want to talk about or want to listen to, there's other places you should go, and there's lots of good ones.
And be nice to them, give them a shot. But for here, that's not what we're doing.
No, we're not. But I think one of the things we should talk about each and every
Mhm.
week, right, is that there's going to be a handful of fighters that we tune in for some comedy and we tune in for some laughs. But really, the most enjoyable part of watching these shows each weekend is tuning in and seeing someone that makes you sit back and say, "Wait a second, this guy is clearly not fighting below his level right now." And if I had to, start a list of 10, 15 fighters that were going to graduate to Showbox, or I almost said Friday Night Fights, rest in peace, but something of that ilk, we're going to have a list of those guys too. And we're going to talk about them. That'll be fun as well.
Can I throw a name out for you?
Yeah, sure.
Now, I don't know that you ever saw him. I mean, actually, the likelihood is pretty high.
I don't know.
But we're talking about the next Emmanuel Navarrete, and whether or not you think he's good, he got his start somewhere, and he was able to build his career. And I remember when he fought Isaac Dogboe, no one gave him a shot. It was like, Isaac Dogboe looks like the next guy they're strapping the rocket to. And Navarrete came in, and we found out that he could fight, and he fought the club level guys for a very long time, and he even took a loss. And what I'm trying to say is, like, we're going to get into that. We're going to look at who it is that when they come and get their opportunity on the big stage, you'll know, you heard it from Tim, this guy could fight.
Yeah, looking ahead, as you said, looking ahead, one of the things we should talk about too is, and you can pair this up with my club streaming schedule that's online, is that we'll highlight a couple of shows that, and it won't always be about the comedy level from an entertainment perspective. I know we just talked about that, but it'll be one of these types of guys in action, or a really well matched, 4 to 6 round fight of potentially a couple of guys you never heard of. But when you turn into them, you're going to see 2 guys just letting their hands go. And that's, I think, what we all want to see when we watch boxing anyway. And so we'll talk about that. We'll highlight those. So that'll give you an opportunity to maybe just check out one show or one fight every weekend and see what it's all about.
And the last thing, it's only been, sample size is very small. We've done one show, which we have not released, but we did a little test run. And I think a Tim Boxeo curse exists, because you picked one guy last week. This is the guy to watch. This guy may be that guy that could get to that next level. And he lost.
Who was that, Angelo?
Apti?
It
Dovtiv?
was Apti. It was Apti. Apti got steamrolled in Russia. Oh my gosh. Apti got steamrolled in Russia. Yeah. Big Jack, massive man, and he exerted his will and muscle on Apti, who was being built up as, getting very close to making his debut on Showbox, literally within the next 3 to 6 months, and Big Jack just ran him over. So I guess there's two curses, because the other one that I thought, where my mind initially went, was we talked about on episode 0 Marco Radonjic from
Oh,
Montenegro.
but okay, where
Wait,
you go with this?
yeah, so heavyweight Marco Radonjic, right? 22-0, 22 knockouts,
Mm-hmm.
30 years old, from Montenegro, but he's living in Germany. Again, back to the beauty of German heavyweight fighting, because you would think a 22-0 fighter with 22 knockouts is someone you'd heard of, right? And I think I've only seen Marco fight a handful of times, and most people probably have never heard of him, and rightfully so. Certainly not a disparaging comment on my part, but nonetheless, he was on the books, and then Saturday morning, I'm firing up the computer, getting all excited, and he was scratched. He was scratched from the lineup, which is par for the course, because I think he's been scratched about 3-4 times. He's only fought once since 2019. So yeah, I guess you could argue there was two curses this past weekend. We're not off to a really great start.
Well, you did say, though, because I asked you, where is it that of all these fights happening this weekend, something weird is going to happen? Which one has the highest potential? And you picked that card.
Yeah, we nailed it down to that fight, either because, well, it's been scratched so many times already that he's 22-0 with 22 knockouts, and 3 fights ago he fought a guy who's 0-2. Time 2 times before that, 0-2. So either he was going to get matched slightly in deeper water than he should have. It could have made for a fantastic knockout, or we're going to get 0-2 again and be just a train wreck on the other side, or scratch. So yeah, that was, if I were a betting man, I guess that was probably an easy call.
Well, that's what people are going to come to this podcast for, is to hear you make those types of calls on the world of club boxing. So we're going to play a couple of clips now, just from our preview episode, which we are not going to release, but we did a preview episode, and we kind of wanted to get a feel for what it was that we were going to do on this podcast. We did a lot of things, some of which we won't do, some of which we will do. We worked on some things, and we're going to keep evolving the format of the show to make sure that Tim could bring you into the world of club boxing. So, Tim, any final words before we hit play on the clips?
No, I'm just really excited to have these discussions, share some stories, look back at some of these fights each weekend that in a little more depth. And also, we've got some more plans for the future as we continue to move forward. So we'll share all that when the time's ready. But looking forward to getting this going.
And so, just one last thing. Now, can you give us your thoughts on Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury? Just kidding. Every time I asked him about that stuff, he just laughs and is like, really?
No thoughts. No. They don't exist.
All right, guys, enjoy the clips. Subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you are ready and set to get the first episode. If you could be so kind, leave a rating and a review. You don't have to leave a review, I guess, but leave a good rating so people know where to go to find the Tim Boxeo Show and just discover the wonderful world of boxing that is underneath the surface level, just bubbling up, waiting to get enjoyed. So thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy these clips. What is it? A guy who impresses Tim, what does that look like? I looked him up. He's not bad. Like I think he's ready to maybe 1 or 2 more fights, but he's almost ready to graduate to like that showbox level. He looks good. I don't know what about defense, because none of these guys are able to really get anything going against him, but the offense that he's putting together looks good.
It does, yeah. It does look good. He's got all the offensive tools. And like I said, and like you kind of just alluded to, I mean, he could definitely take the step up to showbox right now. If he wins or looks good, and I'm not so concerned about that. So what it makes me put him on my list is just like, I'm watching a card that I'm not that I enjoy for a variety of different reasons. And then suddenly you see someone on there like, holy shit, right? This guy could easily fit into like a showbox card or a higher level than what he's fighting at. And it's not someone with a lot of fanfare or whatever. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on this guy. So he definitely fit the bill. He talked after the fight about qualifying for the Olympics. So I don't know what that's going to do for. He has not qualified, but
he doesn't look
wants
well.
to.
He fights out of Guatemala. I imagine that based off of what I've seen from him, he'd probably coast to qualifying.
Yeah.
He's a big guy. Like he looks much bigger, or sorry, he's bigger than he looks on TV because he's a nearly 6 feet tall super middleweight. I wasn't expecting that when I looked him up.
Yeah, me neither.
Even though
No,
you
you
wrote it
say
in
it.
the notes, I skipped that.
No, no, I'm with you there. Yeah, he's one to watch, man. Be good to see what he does with his next fight. And I don't know who he must be signed to someone because
If not, Samson's about to come through.
yeah, there you go. I mean, he started off in Big Punch Arena, and then God bless. And
What
then
is
if you could see me, I'm doing the sign of the cross, like when I say Big Punch Arena in Tijuana.
All right, explain that.
Well, Big Punch Arena is like the mecca of boxing in Tijuana. I mean, everyone fights at Big Punch Arena at one time or another. And matter of fact, that's where our guy Chris Lovejoy has fought, at least half of his fights, probably. So I had to pause this fight in Mexico. But then I went and played it after Farah was done. And it was, I was interested in this fight because I want to say, and I don't know if they've changed it, but I think BoxRec had it listed as a heavyweight fight now. And anytime heavyweights fight, is it? Oh, okay. So anytime heavyweights fight in Mexico, I'm generally going to tune in because there's a high probability of someone being about 5'8", 300 pounds. And it's just true. Like, I hope that doesn't sound bad to say, but it's just the way it rolls, and especially in like Tijuana, but or Sinaloa. But this Cuban, Giovanni Brazon, 23-year-old guy, he was 5-0, 5 KOs. I don't know if they just weighed in like slightly above cruiserweight is probably what happened, and why they listed at heavyweight. Fought an absolute war against German Garcia, who was 7-2 at the time. The Cuban Brazon had him out, man. I mean, like the first 2 rounds, it was like this fight is going to be over quick, and somehow Garcia stayed on his feet. There were no knockdowns in it, but Garcia stayed on his feet. And then just like you've seen in so many other fights before, it was one of those oh shit moments where the guy that was getting the piss beat out of him just all of a sudden just dug down and turned the tables. And then like the next 2 or 3 rounds, it was just back and forth. Both guys just letting their hands go. And it was great, but Garcia ended up getting cut, and the doctor actually stopped the fight in 8th round. And the other awesome side note to this fight is because I like all the interest, all the funny shit that goes along with the fights, right? And this was a WBC Bridgerweight title fight, out of not the main Bridgerweight belt, of course. It couldn't have been for that.
Not the prestigious WBC Bridgerweight title.
No, and I've since learned as I was doing some Googling that there is actually a silver Bridgerweight version, and there's an international. But I thought it was a continental, which would have been equally awesome. But it was a WBC Latino Bridgerweight title.
Okay, yeah. Thank God you made that distinction. I was gonna write a really strongly worded letter to Mauricio. I don't have to now, though.
No, you're safe. Yeah, one of my friends, and he didn't know I wasn't watching it live, but he direct messaged me on Twitter and he said, "We've got a Bridgerweight war." And I'm like, "Oh my God, how am I missing the Bridgerweight war?" Because then I like to tweet that shit out and like capitalize put Bridgerweight in all caps. And then people start getting pissed, right? Like, oh, this is awful. I just think it's hilarious.
I mean, like, look, why not?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that I think it's hilarious.
When you're operating on the level that you operate, there's bound to be some crazy things happening. So what crazy stuff happened this weekend that people probably would not believe, or what just caught your mind is like, this is the freak show of the week that I must watch?
So usually there's more. Again, back to how many events we had over the weekend. Like, I think it was 2 weekends ago, one of my guys in Fiji, well, I'm guessing he didn't have the best boots. His boot, how do your boxing boots malfunction in like round one? It's interesting to me. Like the whole tread comes off the underside. But they screw it, man. They took the boots off and
He fought barefoot.
Big guy was fighting barefoot. Yeah. So normally it's something cool like that. But this one is equally as cool because it's the legend himself, Saul El Phoenix Assassin Farah.
Wait, is that two nicknames or that's one? The Phoenix Assassin.
El Phoenix Assassino Farah.
Okay. All right. I'd love to know what that means, but we don't have to get into that.
Yeah. Okay. So Farah fighting in and of itself is like an epic moment for me. But what brings it into like a story of you wouldn't believe it is a week ago, the 26th of March, he had a fight scheduled versus a guy who was making his pro debut. And so, like I said,
could you tell people what Saul's record is so we could just kind of get the gravity of the situation?
Yeah. So our man, Saul Farah, 73 wins, 26 losses, and 3 ties, and there's 3 draws, and there's got to be at least another 5 to 10 that aren't on BoxRec. So our guy has easily fought over 100 fights, and he was going to contest his Bolivian Bridgerweight title, which furthers the legend. Is the legend Farah was the first one in the world to capture a Bridgerweight title of any type when Bolivia put one on the line for him in December. And this was on the 26th of March against some guy named Pedro Guanachaba, who for the life of me, I couldn't find any information about him ever boxing. But a week before the fight, he posted some training video of himself doing some sprints. And my guy was winded, man. I don't know. He was not ready for the 12 rounds of hell that Saul Farah was going to give him. Well, long story short, the commission stepped in and said, all right, listen, you can fight Pedro in a 4 or 6 round fight, but we are not sanctioning this for a 12-round fight. And
was
they
the
did
title
it
still on the line, though?
A 4 or 6? Yeah, that would have been the good question. That's probably, it would have only taken 1, so I don't know what he's so pissed at. Farah, but yeah, so Farah got pissed. This was at a press conference that I stumbled across, trying to find out if the fight was going to go live, and it was actually a press conference announcing that they weren't going to have the fight, and and it broke out into an all-out melee.
He's not joking. Like I watched it, and it's like you got these 2 guys are sitting at a table. There's a very like not so big guy sitting between them, and these are 2 quote unquote Bridgerweights. The guy's wearing up his mask, and then the guys start jawing at each other. Then they stand up, and Saul decides in standing up that he needs to pick up his title, so he picks up his title to show it. And then he puts it down, picks it back up, and then chucks it at his opponent.
Yeah.
He didn't hit him because the guy in the middle, like I guess he like blocked. He didn't block it, but he like redirected it, so it didn't hit the guy in the face. But then very soon afterwards, they literally like this isn't our normal guys shove each other at a press conference. This is like no, they really fought.
Yeah. They let their hands go, and each of them connected multiple times. Yeah, this wasn't an NBA fight by any stretch of the imagination.